Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the board meeting for the Indian Wells Valley Water District. Calling the meeting to order at 6 p.m. Let's see. Mr. Zadiba, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Please put your hand over your heart, repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Roll call.
President St. Amand.
Present.
Director Griffin.
Here.
Director Cordell.
Here.
Director Rotora.
Here.
Vice President Boyd.
Here.
Posting of agenda declaration, please.
The meeting for tonight's regular board meeting was posted on Friday, February 11th, 2022.
All right, thank you. Conflict of interest declaration. Let us start with our remote vice president.
None from Boyd.
Cordell, no. Griffin, none.
Rotora, none.
St. Amand, none. But that being said, I must notify you that I am an employee of the federal government. However, that being said, anything I say tonight are my opinions alone and do not necessarily reflect those of my employer or the rest of the board of directors. Thank you. Item 6, public questions and comments. This portion, that was a call about my extended warranty, I'm sure. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address the board on any matter not on the agenda and over which the board has jurisdiction. However, no action may be taken by the board of directors on any item not appearing on the agenda. Non-agenda speakers are asked to limit their presentation to 5 minutes. Public questions and comments on items listed on the agenda will be accepted at any time the item is brought forth for consideration by the board. When you're recognized by the chairperson, please state your name and address for the record. Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public? Thank you, sir. Please state your name
Ron Kosinski,
and your city of residence.
not in Ridgecrest, county.
All right.
In the county, yeah. I just want to make one quick comment. In keeping with the water district becoming more transparent, I really appreciate the way that your committee assignment sheets are now. You listed not only the committees and when they meet, but also what they're responsible for. And I think many people in the past have really not known that, so I kudos to you. It just goes on to, becoming more transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good evening, caller. Please state your name and address.
This is Renee Westalusk. I live within Ridgecrest city limits.
Thank you.
My question is for public comment. I looked at the agenda several times and I can't find anywhere on the agenda about a discussion about the adjudication to answer questions from the public. Is it not going to be even discussed at all tonight?
My discussion on the adjudication is going to occur in closed session. However, I do think that we indicated that we would have that on the agenda in the future, and that could have been an oversight, and so we'll try to address that next time. Apologize.
So you're not even going to give an update on anything?
There's no further update since we had the board workshop on the 26th of January.
Has there been any movement on the fee elimination, may I ask?
The hearing on the fee elimination is set for February 18th, so this week, but we hopefully will know on that real quick. And then we're continuing to work on, moving the case forward, and we're still trying, and we continue to work on ways to try to make it easier for the small domestic well owners to appear and participate. It's an ongoing process. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. we have anyone else in the public wishing to make comment? All right. I'll give it just a few seconds in case somebody pops up. All right, moving on then to item 7. Presentation by Andy Fedek of Fedek and Brown, audit report. Mr. Fedek.
Thank you, sir. Hi, my name is Andy Beck with the firm of Fedek and Brown. And I'd like to get started on the next slide, which is the independent auditor's report, which is located actually on page 1 of the financial statements. On the bottom paragraph, we give an opinion. In the case of the district, we give an unmodified, clean opinion by saying that the financial statements are fairly stated. Next slide, please. Here we have a summary of the statements of net position. This statement shows that total assets were $73.7 million, which is an increase of approximately $317,000. Deferred outflows of resources were at $1 million, which is an increase of $183,000, and consists of amounts related to OPEB and pension. Now, this amount is offset by your deferred inflows of resources at $469,000, which is an increase of approximately $3,000. Total liabilities were at $41.2 million, which is a decrease of $533,000. And on the bottom, you have the district's net position or net worth at $38.1 million, which is an increase of $1 million. Now, of your net position, your net investment in capital asset is by far the largest portion at $20.3 million, which is essentially your capital assets used in operation and as a result not available for future spending. Next slide, please. Here we have a summary of the statements of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. This statement shows that total revenues were at $14 million, which is an increase of approximately $2.9 million. Total expenses were at $15 million, which is an increase of approximately $1.8 million. And capital contributions were at $2 million, which is an increase of approximately $1.3 million. And again, increasing your net position by approximately $1 million. Next slide, please. We also provide a management report consisting of our communication with those charged with governance and our communication of control deficiencies. Next slide, please. In our communication with those charged with governance, we are required to communicate any significant estimates or sensitive note disclosures. Now, in the case of the district, cash and investments, capital assets, OPEB, and pension were all significant estimates and sensitive note disclosures. There were no difficulties encountered in performing the audit, no disagreements with management, and no management consultation with other independent accountants. Next slide, please. In our communication of control deficiencies, we noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Next slide, please. So to summarize, the district received an unmodified clean opinion, which is the highest opinion that you could get. Net position increased by approximately $1 million. Total revenues increased by approximately $2.9 million. Total expenses, and I see a little typo, that should be increased by approximately $1.8 million. And total capital contributions increased by approximately $1.3 million. I'd like to conclude by thanking all the staff members of the district. And next slide, please. I could take a moment now to answer any questions.
Yes, the 2.8 million that we had increased, is that due to the GA? The 2.8 million that is on the paperwork here, is that due to the GA fees?
2.8 million. Are you talking about the increase in total revenue?
Yes.
most of that increase is due to the increase in water sales.
Right, right. And that increase was about 1.8 million from the GA, both replenishment fee and increase in the pumping fee.
Okay,
Right.
that's what
So
I
in your
figured.
total expenses, your operating expenses increased by approximately 1.6 million. Majority of that was your GSA replenishment fees.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions from the board?
I want to make sure that I understand that. I'm assuming that there is an equal expense associated with that as well. So that basically the income and the expense of the GA is essentially just zeroing each other out.
It would be close, but because of the timing of the payment versus when we
Oh,
received
sure.
revenue.
Yeah, I
Yes.
didn't mean to be to the cent, just
Right.
roughly. Okay.
Are there any questions from the
This is-
public?
This is Director Boyd.
Go ahead, Mel.
New to the auditing process, and I'm really glad. I mean, this is great news. I'm curious, in your analysis, are you able to forecast any
No.
problems?
So what we do is we verify the accuracy of the numbers that management is representing. We don't do any kind of financial planning or forecasting.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone from the public? Anyone online? All right. Are we looking for a vote to accept the report?
So
I
moved.
think it's just a receive.
It's received. Okay, all right. Then we'll move on. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, same to you.
We're having a great one.
Yeah. Well, everybody, but
Friends.
what could be better? All right.
I got a cupcake.
Business and committee reports. First, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion?
Thought it was God speaking.
Any from the public? No? Okay. Well, then let's call for the vote, please.
President St. Amand,
Aye?
Director Griffin,
Aye.
Director Cordell,
Yes.
Director, Rutora,
Aye.
Vice President Boyd.
Aye, aye.
Okay. What was there? All right, very good. Plant and Equipment Committee.
Before we go on.
Yes,
President,
go ahead.
Jason, could you help me with this computer and get it back to the screen? It's saying questions still. Yes. So what did I do wrong?
You touched it. You looked at it the wrong way.
Did it wrong.
Your mom.
It was still following the report and then it ended, so.
Well, you can give him mine. Come on.
You give here, Jason, if you need some help.
Yeah. I just give him, you give him Mallory's,
On that one.
Jason.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sorry.
You're welcome, no worries. Plant and Equipment Committee.
I will take that if you would like.
Okay,
So when we went to PD, I presented the rate sheets that we got from the two contractors that responded. And that was Lane Christensen and Best Drilling and Pump. And there were some questions about whether we were essentially comparing apples to apples on some of these rates. And so I did go back and ask the contractors to clarify a few things. And so there are some changes, and that is the handout you had sitting in front of you when you arrived. So there are some changes in the MOB and DMOB rates so that they are essentially comparing the same thing, which is a pump rig and a two-man crew and a service truck per hour. And then Best went back and actually updated all their equipment rates. So all those equipment rates for Best Drilling and Pump are new. There were no changes for the Lane Christensen rates. So, and I did add them up like we had done in the bid sheets at the bottom. I didn't add in the other part of those, the first two bid schedules, just because one decided to throw in a semi-truck driver and the other, didn't throw in anything. So, they're pretty close. I think Lane is still a little lower, especially when it comes to their equipment rates. And he did confirm again today that that is, equipment only. Probably helps that they are a large company and do own all their own equipment. So I would still be recommending we go with Lane as the primary and Best as the secondary. But, we can sign contracts with both of them and use them as they're available is basically the way we've done it in the past. So
Okay.
I'll take any questions you might have.
Any questions?
I just have a couple. I appreciate you doing that very much. So was Best, their equipment, was it operated or was it non-operated?
Yes, it was at first. He was including fuel and operators, yeah.
Okay, so he was including fuel and
He
operators.
was, yeah, he updated it, so those are the new rates.
Okay, so it really, in my opinion, it doesn't matter if we sign a contract with both, we have the option.
Yes.
But what concerns me is, did you look at what we're gonna be using the most of in the field? Like if it's a labor, a rig truck and stuff that's on site, that's obviously where we're gonna have the most time compared to a shop welder or something like that. So how does it work out there? I mean,
It depends what work we're needing done. I mean, if it comes to just a regular, rehab, we're gonna need a crane, pulling rig. Sometimes a chemical trailer, sometimes not. They'll get video surveys and, sometimes we need that stuff, sometimes we don't.
So this is just a general contract then?
It is general, sometimes we need a welder, sometimes we need an electrician. It just is, you just never know what work's being done.
Yeah,
so.
well, no, and my only really concern is if, I see that Best is cheaper, like on the camera by $1,000, and so.
And they sub it out, which is strange because Lane has their own, yet they're more expensive.
Yeah.
So.
So that's all that concerns me. I want to
Yeah.
make sure that, if we got something going on in the field, that we're using the company that is the cheapest on the labor rates.
Yeah.
Compared to, hey, they may have been cheaper in the shop, but they're actually working here in the field in Ridgecrest, not in Barstow in our shop working. So they're spending more time here and that's gonna
Yeah.
cost us more money. So that's all I want to make sure.
They all come out of the Inland Empire now, so
Okay.
Lane doesn't have a Barstow shop anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry,
Director
my
Boyd?
connection isn't as, this is Dirk, Vice President Boyd. My connection is not as good as it could be. Renee, did you just include a rough status on well 33?
No, that comes later.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Would you mind, for clarity's sake, restating your recommendation?
My recommendation is the same as I gave in the committee report, which would be to sign a contract with both companies. We would primarily call on Lane first to see if they're available, and if not, then we would call on Best.
Okay. Are there any further questions or discussions? Well,
If one company doesn't get the contract, are they gonna be willing to come in and help separately? I know they're both getting it, but I mean,
We end up working with both, and we haven't had any trouble with that. A lot of times when we call on Lane, for instance, they may not have a crew available for a week, and if they call Best, they say, well, we can have someone out there tomorrow. It depends how urgently we need it done, too, so.
yes, no? Can I get a motion? It's you, Chuck.
I know, I'm just hesitant. I'm just trying to figure these changes out that we got, just to see, because.
Yeah, the only changes of,
The only thing that concerns me, Renee, is one is giving us operated prices for the equipment, Best.
not
right?
anymore, not anymore. Those are new. rates. He changed it. He sent me a red line version. So those numbers you see there are our new
Okay,
numbers.
so then
So he
it's
sent me a
different
whole
than
red
our
line.
report. For
Yes.
Best, they changed their numbers also.
They changed
So-
all their equipment rate numbers.
So just for clarification, so like on 304 for a rotary crane. Okay, they're charging $200 for a bare crane rental,
Yep,
okay? And Lane is $46.
yep. I verified with both of them. Those are just equipment only.
Okay, then I would make a motion to go with Lane.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. So
surprised
before we go into discussion with the board, are there any questions or comments from the public?
Shouldn't the motion be that we go with Lane as the primary?
As the
best?
primary.
Okay.
Yes, as the primary and Best as the secondary.
Okay. Is anybody online interested in making comment? All right. Any additional comment from the board? All right. Vice President Boyd?
Aye.
All right, very good. Hold on. Let's go ahead and call for the vote, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Nope, it's the connection. I understand.
President St. Amand,
Yes.
Director Griffin,
Yes.
Director Cordell,
Yes.
Director Rotora,
Aye.
Vice President Boyd.
Yes.
Very good. All right, let's see. Let's move on to Administration Executive Committee.
So,
Don?
yeah, this is just simply a change in the organizational reporting structure. It's not an addition to manpower. It is for the warehouse administrator position to report directly to the field services supervisor as opposed to the chief financial officer, which is where that position currently reports. If you read the staff report, actually years ago, that was the situation, that the warehouse administrator did report to the field services supervisor. At the time, the district was having issues with Datomatic Firefly units on the meters, and there was increased need for the field supervisor to be in the field dealing with that issue. So the reporting line was changed to the chief financial officer. That's no longer the case, and it seems to make more sense to have that position reporting directly to the field services supervisor, whom they deal with more than they do the CFO. And also, the warehouse administrator's office is out in the warehouse area, in the shop area, so it's more convenient in terms of communication. So again, there's really no financial impact. No, it's just simply a organizational chart change to reporting lines, just to have that position report to the field services supervisor. Change the job descriptions accordingly.
All right. Any questions from the board?
I have one. I was in the meeting and I do recommend we do this, but I also had a question on the no impact. We're asking somebody to take on more responsibility, so there is not an increase in pay or anything like that, or is that the?
No,
Okay.
no, it's not that much more responsibility, I don't think. I defer to Ty, but
Well, are we deducting
We
from
do,
time then? Is that-
we do an annual salary survey. We do an annual salary survey. And I can say that some of the warehouse administrators do report directly to them. So that is included already in some of the other districts that we look at as far as what their salaries are.
Okay.
And
I
then-
just want to make sure it was,
I understand.
fair for our our staff, and before we just said, we're making this decision and staff's going to be irritated, so.
that's a good question. Appreciate it.
Any other directors' questions? Any questions from the public? Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the reorganization as proposed?
I would make the motion to accept the reorganization as proposed for the restructure of the field service supervision responsibilities.
Second.
A lot to say.
I'm trying to figure out where we're going with it.
Is there any discussion from the board on this motion?
None.
Okay, all right. Commentary from the public? All right, let's have a vote, please.
President St. Amand,
Yes.
Director Griffin,
Aye.
Director Cordell,
Yes.
Director Rotora,
Aye.
Vice President Boyd.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The motion passes. Item C2, Kern Local Agency Formation Commission, LAFCO. Nominations for special district seat on Kern LAFCO.
Okay, when this was presented, Admin Exec Director Boyd, I believe, had some questions about the responsibilities. So I've got a little more information if you want, if there's a consideration for a nomination. So LAFCO, the duties are to review and approve or disapprove with or without amendment, wholly, partially, or conditionally, proposals for the incorporation of cities, formation of special districts, annexation of territory to local agencies, exclusion of territory from a city, disincorporation of a city, consolidation of 2 or more cities, and the development of a new community. So it's a 4-year term. They do meet monthly. It's on the 4th Wednesday of each month at 5 o'clock. I don't know for a fact, but I would assume with COVID and things being more remotely, there may not be travel. I mean, in the past, it would require travel to Bakersfield, but that may not be the case now. And there is a stipend of $100 a meeting. So if that's incentive for you, they're looking for nominations.
Is there any member of the board interested in serving on LAFCO?
Don, could you provide a little clarity on the breadth of this responsibility? Is this just within our district, or is it across Kern County?
It's across Kern County. It's the Kern Local Agency Formation Commission, so it's Kern County.
Have we had a position? Have we had somebody in the past act in this role?
I think Don Cortachado may have served at one time. Lauren's shaking her head, yes, that's my recollection. But I don't remember anybody else on the board during my time here.
Is there any consequence for us not participating?
None at all.
Are there any benefits for us participating?
$100 a meeting.
Actually, this is a fairly important group. They have quite a bit of power, and so I wouldn't downplay that. In fact, I would encourage. I mean, I have no personal interest. But if Mel or anybody else wanted to, I would encourage the board to support somebody.
We have dealt with LAFCO at the time I've been here when we changed boundaries or annexed an area. So we do deal with them occasionally. It's been a while, but we do deal with them.
Yeah. Well, you know, and with Sigma and everything, and one thing or another, and us probably trying to push our boundaries out to take, let's say, include some of these small pumpers, that kind of thing. It could be important over the next 4 years.
Yeah, usually those instances, the small providers are asking to be included in the district, and that's something that the state supports. So I'm sure LAFCO probably is going to just accept them.
Probably would, I agree.
And just to be sure, you're not volunteering to serve on the LAFCO.
You're absolutely right, I'm not
Okay.
volunteering. I was
Very good.
hoping Mel might.
I think if it was
Well,
$300, I'd probably go.
Yeah, you would.
I'm trying to determine if it's a position that could strengthen the water district's role in local and perhaps broader water issues across the county. It's a little fuzzy to me as to what impact we might have, other than perhaps to just be aware of activities that are going on within LAMCO. When do we have to respond with to this
18th.
opportunity?
18th of March.
And I understand Director Boyd's concern, or comments. I have a concern about it. I guess I'm going to ask our legal counsel. As Stan mentioned, the annexations and stuff like that, we don't know where we're going to be in the future. Would there be a conflict if one of us did?
Probably.
That's what I would feel. would be the
I would think
conflict
that there
if we
would be
were
a
on board.
conflict, and Mallory would probably be. I have not been involved. I've done annexations, detachments, that goes through LAFCO, but everything else, I'd be surprised if Mallory would be able to sit up there and cast a vote. We don't do it here, and I'd be surprised if he did it there. It's a quasi public agency. And now they have, if you go onto the LAFCO site, they do have agendas and everything. You could look at that and maybe get an idea of what their subject matter looks like. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you for that, Jim. Again, speaking for the interests of the board and the district in general, I worry that an organization like this might move forward with initiatives that would adversely impact us, and we wouldn't have a voice or at least an awareness until actions were already taking place. Maybe I'm giving it more credit than it deserves, but will we have another board meeting before the 18th?
I believe we will, yes.
Okay. Let me commit to the board that I'll spend a little bit of time working with Don, Jim, and a few others just to find out if it's worthy of us to move forward in a positive way in terms of nominating a member of the district for this position.
Mallory, you might want to just give LAFCO a call. I've dealt with them before. They're very reasonable. There's notice requirements, so I don't think they're not going to sneak up on anybody, but they may be able to give you a better feel for the duties and responsibilities of a member like we're talking about.
Okay. I will commit to the board that I'll do that.
Okay, so we'll hold off the final decision on a nomination until next month. If you could add this back into the admin committee agenda and the main agenda, I'd appreciate it very much. Thank you, sir. All right. Item Delta. Krieger and Stewart Engineering Consultants, 2022 fee schedule. Don.
Right, you should have had, well, you did have in your packet, but I printed for your benefit, copies of the proposed changes, which we've done every year to show the changes from 2021 to 2022. And again, they're pretty much in line with around 3% on average. You'll note some of the positions have been eliminated or reclassified. And some of the services, there's been no change in the hourly rates. But for specific classifications, on average, again, if you look, they're right around 3%. I believe Chuck Krieger is on the phone if you have specific questions about anything that's before you. But the recommendation is to accept the rate schedule as presented.
Any questions for Mr. Krieger? Oh.
No question.
Okay.
I can get him on the phone if need be.
No, I don't think anybody has any questions.
I think he anticipated the audit report was going to go longer because I told him he didn't.
That guy wanted to get to dinner with his wife, you could tell. He was ready to go.
All right, very good. Do we have any, a motion to accept the change in rates?
I move we accept the change in rates.
Thank you, sir. Anyone would care to second that?
I'll second it.
All right, very good. Is there any comment from the public? Very good. Any comment or discussion from the board?
I want to call Chuck or the rates might go up.
Okay, thank you very much. Then let's go ahead and have a vote.
President St. Amand,
Yes?
Director Griffin,
Yes.
Director Cordell,
Yes.
Director Rotora,
Aye.
Vice President Boyd.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Item E, installation of flow reducers. General Manager Zadiba.
I'll handle that if that's okay.
Of course.
The board will recall, we had this conversation some time ago, probably at least 6 months ago, whether or not to utilize these. At some point, the staff was instructed to prepare a draft policy, which we did. It was discussed in August, no action was taken. And the bottom line is, it just came back up last week, and our task, which is to take the policy and turn it into a regular and then a shut-off policy, that hasn't quite made it up to the top of the priority list. We would have something for the appropriate committee to look like to look at in March, and then it presumably could come for a better discussion in March in front of the full board.
Okay. very
So we
good.
haven't quite got to it yet, and I apologize for that.
Any questions or comments? Oh, we have a caller. Please, go ahead, caller. Good evening. Name and residence, please. Hello? Caller? If you may be on mute.
Hello. Yes.
There you
Hello.
go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Renee West-Delusk again. I wanted to know, in your examination of drafting this policy, are you looking at any liabilities that would be incurred by adopting this kind of policy? If something were to go wrong, people got somehow adversely affected by this, are you looking at the liability
Yes.
to the water district when you're drafting this, and can you please explain that?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, in a nutshell, we are looking at liability. I have looked at liability. But I would say the district's liability is possibly reduced. At least we're giving some water as opposed to no water, which we're able to do under the delinquent shutoffs. These are accounts that are delinquent and not paying. And I think that, if the board so chooses, putting a flow reducer still provides them with health and safety concerns, whereas a shutoff gives them nothing. So we are looking at it, and it has and will be discussed presumably next month.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public questions or comments? All right, is there any board question or comment?
I have one I want to go back to. It kind of is in line with Renee's question. Could I have staff please speak with the fire marshal? I have a big concern. If we put a flow restrictor on somebody's meter and their fire sprinklers do not work the way they were designed to work because they do not have enough flow, would be my question of liability. If their water was turned off at that point because they didn't pay their bill, then I think our liability would be lifted. But if we restricted their flow and it affected the system in their house to function correctly, that would be my concern, because I know every house that's built has to have that new fire sprinklers, and it demands a flow test by the fire marshal before he will final a house, and it's not going to pass with a flow restrictor in there. So that would be my concern. That would be my only concern, is that fire restrictor. The sprinkler systems.
Sure, we'll do some further work. I think it's going to require a little bit more work than just calling the fire chief. But I understand the concern is that, if somebody thinks they've got water, maybe they think they've got fire protection. Perhaps that could be handled with a notice or something like that, but I don't have I'll have a better answer in March.
Okay.
But I understand what your concern is.
Okay.
So
I have a comment on there that might be helpful, Jim. If we were to notify the customers that are potentially going to be affected by this policy, that they be aware that this could impact their fire suppression capabilities in their home, might that notification serve to protect the water district? Because now the owner of the property knows that they have the responsibility to deal with fire suppression, and it's not the water district's decision to curtail water supplies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's basically providing notice. Mallory, in working on these draft policies, the notice that we would provide, at least the recommendation right now, the notice that we would provide to a delinquent landowner is the same notice that we would utilize if we were locking them down, shutting them off. So we're using the same type of notice, time periods, notices, that type of stuff, as we're doing when I'm shutting them off. And whether I can put a paragraph in there and eliminate all the liability, I'll defer until March on that one.
Okay, thank you for that. And Ty, do you have any early indications of whether the number of people that are delinquent is increasing, or is it stabilized?
It increased in January. I'll get more into it later, but we did have more lockoffs than would be normal. Like I said, I've got exact numbers that'll shed a little more light on that when I go through the financial report.
Okay, sounds like it's still increasing though.
So we are back to locking off then?
So if I remember the conversation, the previous conversation, introducing flow restrictors would be a special circumstance, such as finding ourselves again in a state of emergency where the governor is not allowing us to shut water off to people. And the reason it would be limited to that is because it takes a half an hour to put a flow reducer in, exposing the staff and costing a great deal of money. And it costs virtually nothing to shut the water off, to hang the sign and head for the truck. So
Half an hour to install and half an hour to uninstall when they come in later that day to pay.
that's right. So under normal operating conditions, we would just continue, as I remember the conversation, with shutting water off to customers who are not paying. That the flow restrictor was option was being explored for the circumstance where our district was ordered by the state of California not to shut water off because of an emergency. All right?
Thanks for that.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Directors, the thought just occurred to me that when we generate these lockoffs, and that's a function of the program, the Springbrook program that we use for our accounting software, they would have to change their entire program to accommodate this. It'd have to be a functionality that they would have to add into. And maybe something that we need to ask Springbrook first if they can even do it before we have Jim proceed with finding out if we can.
Changing their software to account for flow
Exactly.
restrictors.
Right.
Okay?
I did notice that Department of Water and Power are now using flow restrictors down in LA.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments?
Just so am I holding off right now, or Jason's going to do a couple quick calls, and then I'm assuming you still expect something in March? That's to the board.
Yes, please.
Very good, thank you.
All right. Very good. Anything else? F, Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. Director Rotora.
That's appropriate.
Microphone.
Sorry about that. The last GA meeting was held on the 9th of February, and the next GA meeting will be on March 9th. When I'm done with my little discussion here, I've gotten some comments from people about the facilitation process that I wasn't able to answer. So when I'm done, if one of our staff members would volunteer to give a word or two regarding what's happening with regard to the facilitation, I would appreciate it. Okay, going on to management activity. Of course, the big news is the Department of Water Resources has approved the GSP, and that was on January 13th. Now, that approval comes with a big caveat, in that the continued approval of the GSP is going to be dependent upon corrective actions being performed in a timely manner. Basically, my feeling is, the bottom line is that we've got 3 years to complete the GSP. And so that's, in my mind, still good news. From my reading of the review, there are 2 major deficiencies, and those are listed up front in the summary. In fact, on page 6, if you want to look, the 2 important deficiencies are, first of all, we're required to make the imported water project executable or find an alternative project. And the second major deficiency was solve the chronic overdraft problem. So now, in actuality, there were 7 categories of corrective actions identified by DWR, and there were 19 specific deficiencies related to one or more of those categories. Now, I told the GA that we really need to have both a schedule and a budget to address all 19 deficiencies. So maybe at your staff meetings that are coming up, you could bring up the issue of both scheduling and budgeting for correcting those 19 deficiencies. Otherwise, what I'm afraid of is we're going to get to the point where everything should be done and we won't know who's responsible. Second of all, the state-funded grant application for GSP projects is due on February 28th. I found out very recently that the scoping conference between the DWP and Capital Corps, which is RGA's representative, was limited to actually only 3 projects: imported water, wastewater treatment plant, and wastewater recycling. And neither the pumping optimization nor the data gaps were ever in the game, unfortunately. The staff recommendation was to put all the grant money on imported water planning, and the water district priorities got no run at all. Now, that's not all bad, believe it or not. Capital Corps is optimistic that there will be some additional funding opportunities for recycled water. Obviously, in the long run, it's not good in general. From what we're being told is there will be no additional GSA grant money for planning of anything. It'll be strictly implementation and infrastructure. And so that includes both the pumping optimization, recycling water, and the data gaps that we were interested in. Now, I know Tim Parker made an attempt to confirm whether or not there was going to be additional planning money, and I haven't had a time to talk to him, so I don't know if there will be planning money or not, although I'm assuming that DWR won't actually provide any until they get pushed to do so. So yeah, my feeling is it's not a done deal, but for now it's not good. And I think that if we want to get money for pumping optimization of any kind, we're probably on our own at this point in time. I see no enthusiasm on the part of the GA to do any of that. And I will bring that up as a subject later on under the new agenda topics. Going on to the temporary water use policy that we've been discussing for the last year or more was killed due to lack of a second. I think you all realize that that temporary use policy came up because we asked for a waiver for the man camp, and somebody on the GA staff said, well, wow, maybe we really need to have a full-blown policy. Well, the PAC never got on board, and apparently the rest of the board didn't get on board either. So that died for a lack of a second. That still, however, leads the question, what do we do with it? Do we want to go back and ask for the waiver that we asked for over a year ago? Do we want to drop it or what? So I'll bring that up later on as well. The shallow well mitigation policy that we've been working on now for seems like forever almost got passed. However, it did not have the emergency option clause in there that the PAC wanted, so we decided to postpone that, but I feel confident, well, as confident as I can be, that it will pass at the next meeting. And I think it will work out, and it is the right thing to do. Financial activity situation, pretty much the same. The largest single expense is recycled water, which doesn't make me happy, but nonetheless, that's what it is. And there was no FY 2020 audit. Again, we're 14 months after the end of the fiscal year, and we did not have an audit. I believe that the general manager is going to try to get it on next month's schedule. We will see. In terms of project activities, the 2021 draft annual report was released to the TAC and to the GA website. 2 observations jumped out at me. One was that there was no overdraft update in it. My feeling is that's not consistent with reporting requirements. The reason for that is primarily that only 66% of the wells were measured. Now, I thought after not having all the wells measured the year before last, that they would be on top of it this year, but I think they actually measured fewer wells this year than they did last year. And then the second thing that jumped out at me is there was no mention of any corrective action to avoid data collection failures like that in the future. And so whatever, I'm making a comment, send back to Stetson on both issues. Now, I think everybody has got a copy of the 2021 draft report, and anybody can send comments. Anybody in the viewing audience, whatever, to Stetson. Steve Johnson would like those comments by February 25th. So if you have time to go through and read it, I will be sending some in, obviously, and I will be making comments at the board meeting. But everybody is welcome to send comments to Steve Johnson. And I think one thing we need to decide as a board is, do we as a board want to send in some type of official written comments representing the board as opposed to individual members? The Stetson response to the 2020 annual report comments was released just recently, like last week. One of the things that came out is after all the comments about the quality of the data from last year's reports, Stetson decided that the data collected for the water year 2020 was not suitable to give valid overdraft assessment. So we didn't get a overdraft assessment in 2020, and right now they're proposing not to give one for 2021. And of course, that's the basis for the allocation that we're given for the replenishment fee, which of course is disturbing. And of course also it's disturbing that we're, in my mind, not providing DWR with what we should be providing in the annual report. Last subject is the digital model that's being transferred between the Navy and DRI, the Desert Research Institute, who put the model together, is still in process, and there has been no activity on that as far as I know. But they're still working on it. So now if I could have the staff respond to the facilitation status, I would appreciate it.
Sure, I really don't have a whole lot that I can provide at that time. We are the staff, district staff and district staff only, nobody else no stakeholders. We've been talking with DWR as well as Stantec. And Stantec is the firm that would be the facilitator. The first step in the process is for DWR and Stantec to enter into a scope of services, if you will. And once that contract is signed, then you're able to go to the next step, which would be trying to develop agendas and potential issues to discuss. I believe we're getting very close to the scope of services, and so I hope that we would be moving forward to potentially the next step within the next couple of weeks. But until I see a signed contract, I don't know. But that's my best estimate, and I do think we are moving along those timeframes. Stantec, they're very receptive. DWR is providing a lot of time for them to do work, so I certainly hope that we're able to get this off the ground with other stakeholders in the basin and have a good facilitation. But one step at a time. We're still at phase one, which is trying to get the scope. And not the scope of what the discussion would be, but the scope of the services that Stantec would provide. So we're getting close, but we're not there, and that's all I really have right now on that.
Is it your understanding that we will have discussions between Stantec and, that is the facilitator, and the individual pumpers before we get together for a large group? Is that still
I'm not going to, I don't know, but I would not be surprised if there possibly was some type of a public meeting prior to individual contact being made between Stantec and other stakeholders. But we're not there yet, Stan.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions for Director Rotora?
No, I kind of had one for Jim that linked with Stan's just now. I'm being asked the same questions you are by lots of people. Jim, are you thinking we're within a month of maybe having a meeting like that, or 2 months, or any timeline at all?
No, but I think that there may be some contact amongst the community before you start seeing this public meeting.
Okay.
Remember, this process, at least in my, what we've discussed, we really need more than the district's participation for this to be worth it for there. So, at some point, we have to go to the stakeholders, and the stakeholders, I assume, would also have to be in agreement on the contents of that meeting. And so I just don't have the time frame for you.
Okay, no problem. That was just my question.
All right, Vice President Boyd, any questions for either Jim or Stan?
I don't really have a comment or a question, but it's a statement of, it's obvious, right? The importance of us understanding the water table levels across the valley, going up or down, whatever is happening, is essential. And I've worked with Stan, and we've looked at some of the data. Stan's looked at it extensively. I've looked at it a little less extensively, but it's concerning that the data that we need to do long-term forecasts and understanding of the water levels in the valley aren't coming together as smoothly as we would hope. But at the same time, we're also still not getting increased participation with folks who are pumping in the valley. Those who have private wells who have not chosen to register or claim what their usages are. I don't know what we can do in the district to encourage further participation. I know we did a lot early on, but it seems to have leveled off. Unless we know what's being drawn out of the valley and what the water tables are doing year to year, this is going to be a really difficult problem in the future to deal with. Call me Captain Obvious.
I'll stick with Vice President. Thank you. Anyone else? Questions or comments from the public? Name and residence, sir.
Ron Kosinski, unincorporated area, county. I'm hiding my address. First of all, Stan, thank you. It's a good report, and you're absolutely right. When I looked at the draft 2021, when it just came out, it's when I saw those open areas, expecting to see what's happening with the levels, what's the usage. I thought maybe that was because it was a draft report and they're going to fill in the blanks. But as you read further, it basically says, no, we're just not going to really do it this year. We're going to just carry it over to next year. I have a real problem with that because as you and I discussed at one point, is when you looked at the actual measurements they were taking in the previous two reports, it didn't come near the 28,000 or the deficit they were talking about. I think it was like 20,000. But anyway, the report has apparently some issues with it, and you've picked up on it, so I'm not going to say more about that. My second one, my biggest comment, the reason I'm here, is it's obvious that the board, the GA, and it's with INEO behind it, INEO County, is pushing for this AVEC project. I don't know, I've said all along, this valley cannot afford it, and I don't know why they can't produce something that would clearly show, and I asked for this when we did the vote on replenishment fee, take time to clearly show the public what this would cost on a monthly basis or yearly basis per resident. I don't think it's that difficult. I think that there's 3 points to it. One is the capital expenditures. Well, they can do some pretty good estimates. You pretty much know that any grant for capital expenditures will probably have to be matched to a certain point. So they can come up with a cost for capital expenditure to install this project, which is it 180 million now, David? I remember 200 million, whatever it is. And then there's the cost of the maintenance and operation of the system. Any engineering firm worth their weight can put together a cost structure of what that's going to cost to maintain and operate. And then the final cost is what would be the yearly cost for the water. We all know that any type of water deals we make with the state water project through their contractors, there will be a fixed price yearly, whether you get any water or not. Okay, so much it's thousands of dollars per acre foot. And then there's also going to be the cost of the water itself when you do get the water. So that particular one, obviously, they can put together a cost estimate on a high and a low. We know what the fixed amount is, but we don't know what the amount is that we're being delivered. Once that's all put together, you can really come down to what is it going to cost per capita or per ratepayer, because obviously the water district is probably going to be, ratepayers are going to be paying for this. And I think that's important. If you're going to garner any community support, you need to have those numbers. And Stan, I don't know whether you're going to get them from them or not. I don't know whether it's something maybe you can put together as a field, but something needs to get out there to the public saying, if we do this APEC project, you can expect that your water bill is going to go up $200 a month across the board. And I'm guessing that's not far off. But something needs to be done with that, because the APEC project is the least one, and they're pushing it, obviously, because DWR says we have to see some movement on the imported water. That's one of their comments. You're going to import water, we want to see what you're going to do on it and how long it's going to take and what's going to go on. And then, of course, the other part of that project cost isn't just the maintenance, the water, and the capital expenditures, but you have all the preliminary work that needs to be done on it, including, crossing, federal and state protected land, all kinds of information. So we need to have something that the public can look at and say, oh, okay, my bill's going to go up $200 a month. And it's got to be as close as it possibly can. I think a good engineering firm can put that together. I'm the firm belief that the imported water can be solved, not easily, obviously. Number one is wastewater. Got to recover wastewater. Number two is, let's get some more information on data. Let's really zero in on what the recharge is in this valley. I still have doubts about the 7650 number. Yes, I proved it, if you want to say, but I always said it's a living document. It needs to be continually researched, because the information they've used, I think they picked almost a worst-case scenario. I personally believe that if there was more research done, especially up in the Rose Valley area and such, that we could probably zero in on a better recharge number, including what's the one I'm talking about, David,
Yes. It's
yeah,
evapotranspiration.
yeah. Because when you look at the numbers, and I asked this question one time, when you look at the numbers of what the recharge rate is, they take and they subtract that number from it. But it's already in the calculations that were done by the USGS study. So I'm not sure that's how accurate that is. So I'm just saying that it's a good possibility that the recharge could be higher. I don't disagree that commercial farming needs to find their way out of the valley eventually. And so I'm looking at a multi-pronged approach for solving our issue without spending hundreds of millions of dollars, increasing everybody's bill here a massive amount. And of course, the third prong, I know when I say this, everybody's going to jump, is somehow to work with, you're never getting any water off the aqueduct. The research I've done and looked at requests from that, and basically, I don't think that LAWP is ever going to let anybody take any water off their aqueduct. There's only one way, and that is if you do some kind of a water storage here for them, and they offer to pay for that. So that way you get something off the aqueduct, you're storing water, it may not be off, but that's, every little bit counts. So even if they, you get 1,000 acre feet a year from it, or 500, it's something. But now you have your outshoot from the aqueduct. All that needs to be looked at before we delve into hundreds of millions of dollars. If you want to talk about Armageddon for the city, that's what it is. It's just too much money. People can't afford it. So I don't know, Stan, if you can get them to create something, maybe you could, work with it and say, hey, if we can get to the public that this is what you could expect to see if we do this project, then you're gonna get the public behind you. And I think they're afraid they're gonna get the public turned against them, because it's gonna be very expensive. So, and the reason I brought it up now is because I see they're really pushing now for grant money to do the research on it, to lay out the pipelines, the sizings, and everything else, and that's really good, but I certainly hope they're not wasting money on a project that we can't afford. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kaczynski.
I certainly agree that if people had a better understanding of what it was going to cost, there'd be fewer people excited about imported water. We got to admit, I mean, not just Ridgecrest, but people in general don't get involved until it hits their pocketbooks. And the sooner that impact is understood, I think the more reasonable everybody will become.
And also, where does that 5,000 acre feet of your land? Once you have your recycled water, once you reevaluate your recharge, once the major farming is gone, which is planned down the road, where does that recharge amount really land? Is it 5,000? Is it 1,000 now? Is it 2,000? I don't think we know that. And you made the perfect example that, and that as long as we can't even tell us right now how much water we're taking out and how, and how much is going in very accurately, how can we make a long-range plan? So they just need to step back, pump the brakes a little bit, which I'm not sure you're going to get to happen, but I think that number needs to come out, however it needs to be calculated.
All right, thank you. I understand we have a caller. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Renee West of Lusk, commenting on the Groundwater Authority report. I wanted to expand some information that was given by Stetson Engineering regarding why you can't calculate the overdraft at this time. Part of it has to do with COVID. They had issues with the Navy staff changing over, and their whole staff that's been doing the readings for quite a few years now changed, and they had to retrain a lot of the people that do the work for the monitoring wells that the Navy takes care of. Then secondly, the Kern County Water Agency has not been monitoring any of the wells that they're in charge of. And there seems to be a problem with the perception that the Kern County Water Agency was doing this as an in-kind contribution all these last 30 years, as well as the Navy, doing all these readings of these monitoring wells. Well, Judy Decker pointed out at the meeting that we're paying tax dollars for Kern County Water Agency to read these monitoring well results and take the measurements. And that needs to be probably taken up with our supervisor, Philip Peters, to get some cooperation with the Kern County Water Agency so that when they take readings from these monitoring wells, they get done. Because Stetson was saying we need another plan to get this data, because for like pretty much the last 2 years there haven't been any measurements taken, and there was a problem with, by the time I guess they might have had personnel in 2020 available to do the groundwater level measurements for the monitoring wells by the Navy personnel when they got them trained. It was past the month of March, and there's a problem with timing. They have to get those early in the year measurements before the pumping begins with the agricultural development in the valley. Otherwise, the readings are off. So I wanted to mention that it's not such an easy thing to explain why we have these data gaps, but part of it has been the interference of COVID. The other thing I wanted to mention is no GSP, Groundwater Sustainability Plan, is going to get a perfect score with DWR. And the attorneys for the GA have pointed this out way before we got the approval on January 13th, because they know what it's like to work with Department of Water Resources. Nothing's ever perfect. There's always room for improvement when you're dealing with the state of California. And so the fact that we have 7 recommendations to get fixed, that's every GSP has to fix something, okay? And then I wanted to also mention our GSP is the only groundwater sustainability plan that was approved in the whole Central Valley. And if you read the Bakersfield Californian, January 31st, so many groundwater sustainability plans were rejected, and ours came through. So I think this is a mark of accomplishment, and we just have to keep going and building and improving. Those are my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Westalosk. Thank you.
Most of what you said was absolutely true. COVID was a factor. I guess the one thing I did catch is that there is, by the way, no real connection between Kern County and the Kern County Supervisor and Kern County Water Agency. They are independent agencies, and the Kern County Water Agency does get funding through property taxes. If you look at your property tax bill, they're one of the ones that have, it's a very small number, but everybody pays it, so they are getting paid. But it comes down to, and totally agree, is we need a long-term solution to having reliable readings of those wells. I mean, it all starts there. If we don't get good well numbers, and it's got to happen, like she said, before the farmers start pumping, because once the farmers start pumping, the numbers are no longer accurate. So I'm not saying it's an easy problem to correct, but nonetheless, it wasn't the GA's responsibility the first year anyway to do anything. They didn't realize how bad the problem was. The second year, I fully thought that, we got to figure out how this year we're going to fix the problem. And I don't care how they do it, but I know that our ratepayers are paying $4 million a year because of the current understanding of the overdraft. And we can't let that go on. We need to make sure that we get good measurements. We do understand the overdraft. We do need to get a resolution or a reconciliation of what's in the GSP for overdraft and what the 2019 annual report said was the overdraft, which was something like a fourth of what was in the GSP. Obviously, we don't expect them to be right on top of each other. There's going to be a few hundred acre feet difference under the best of conditions, but we've got to do better than we're doing now. And that's all there is to it.
Thank you. Are there any more comments from the public online? Okay, just a few observations. The GSP was, in fact, passed, but if you read the center of the report, the people who reviewed it at the state level made a point of stating that nowhere in the GSP was there really a specific mechanism for achieving balance. So that has to be addressed. They apparently did not state how they expected they were going to bring the water usage and the water recharge into balance. And then there were comments about the pipeline. The state staff said that while it's certainly feasible from an engineering perspective to bring water up from AVIC, there were no specifics at all as to how the Groundwater Authority was going to plan to achieve that goal. And that is related to the comments from Mr. Kaczynski. I have a feeling that there aren't specifics in there because they really haven't got a good idea how they're going to move forward. And then finally, interestingly enough, everybody assumes that the water market is going to remain the way the water market has always remained, We've discovered already that Title A entitlements are no longer available. People aren't selling them, they however selling water. But related to that, I just recently read an article up in Kings County, I think it is, where one landowner has stopped a pipeline from crossing his property because he does not want water from their county exported. And several counties have in fact enacted ordinances that prevent the exportation of water. And as the state continues to fail to address the primary cause of our water shortage, I think we'll find that more counties are going to become jealous of their natural resources, and it'll become even more difficult to get water. If you're looking at AVEC, if they have any plans for growth, any water they send up here will not be able to be used down there for growth in their area. So it's a very complicated issue, and I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as easy as some people have been proposing. Do we have any other questions or comments?
I have one.
Vice
This
President.
Director, Vice President, whatever I am, Boyd.
Captain Obvious.
Is there something that we could be doing in the water district to help with the monitoring of the wells in the valley? Is that something that we could, we certainly have the staff that understands wells, and I'm sure would necessarily need a lot of training to read water levels in wells, but perhaps there's something the water district could do to help supplement the workforce challenges that the county and others have been having to monitor our wells across the valley. Is there any legal issues that would prevent us from doing that?
From just monitoring wells?
Yep, yeah, helping, well,
I think you
the
meant
past 2 years,
measuring
well
the
monitored.
wells.
I would have to find out where the wells are, what the access agreement is. I'm not sure that, we can check into that, Mallory, today. I don't know if we're just able to step into the role of the Kern County Water Agency or anybody else. It's something we can look into, but I'm not sure right now.
If it's just a staffing issue, it might be something that we could help. Because it certainly needs to be done. This is really important to understand what the water table is doing in the valley. And I don't want to sit here as a board member and just point at others that aren't doing their job as the reason for us not understanding it. If it's something that we could help with.
I have a couple comments. Stan, does it say how many of those wells, most of those wells have transducers in them, do they or do they not? That they're monitoring, or are they having to run a sounder down?
Yeah, I think most of them are sound.
I think they use a sounder primarily.
Primary sounders, okay,
There are a few wells that do have transducers, but primarily it's using a sounder.
okay. I want to thank Mr. Kaczynski for some of his comments. I think it's important that we know what we have coming in and what we have coming out. You talked about the imported water, and we need to know what is here before we start searching for water, so we know how much water we actually need. And I want to make sure that we stay focused on the recycled water. We make that our top priority to get that work done, and let's see where we can go from there. That's basically my comments for now.
Okay, thank you.
I want to thank Stan for his report. He's usually pretty well right on. 14 months late on the audit and budget from the GA. We've actually been trying to get a budget from the GA since 2017. I think that with the water district paying the fee every month, I think that it's negligence on our part to continue to pay it where we cannot answer to the ratepayers for where the money is going to. And that is my personal opinion. And again, I want to thank Stan for staying on top of all this.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other comments? All right, then let's move on to 8G, General Manager and Staff Update. Don.
Okay, as we always start off with, the safety record is, as of today, 289 days since the last recordable injury. As far as the production, metered production at the wells, the month of January, 110,131,600 gallons. That's 338 acre feet. And as I mentioned every month, the number that we report to the State Water Resources Control Board is actually the metered water through the distribution system and includes the non-revenue water. And that number is 99,751,000 or 306.1 acre feet. Conservation results for the month were reported to the State Water Resources Control Board on February 8th. Consumption was down 25.3% compared to January of 2013, the baseline year established by the State Water Board. As far as our conservation target that was established by this board in June of 2016, through December, we are at 22.8%, and the target was 20%. So we're continuing to exceed that goal. Looking at past January's conservation results, pretty much in line, 16% last year, lower, 30% in 2020, 23.8% in 2019, and 14.3% lower in 2018. We also report on a monthly basis the residential gallons per capita per day, and for January that was 80.8. Again, that does include both indoor and outdoor usage. We had 4 new connections during the month, and year to date, our fiscal year to date, which began July 1st, we have 30 new connections, and those new connections have contributed $172,310 in capital facility fees. Any questions on that part of the report? Moving on to public outreach, the community collaborative meeting was held on February 1st. I did participate remotely. A few things I shared, I mentioned that our office would be reopening on February 7th in anticipation of an influx of customers wanting to arrange for payment plans. I also reported on the number of delinquent accounts and the amount of past due charges due to the governor's moratorium on shutoffs. I mentioned that the board had held a workshop on January 19th, and one of the topics of discussion was the draft revision of our 2020 general plan, which continues. And then I also mentioned that there had been a special board meeting on January 26th. That was a follow-up to the December 14th meeting, providing the public with information on the comprehensive adjudication. And also mentioned the March 15th date for the case management conference that's going to be held in Orange County. And also, I did mention the fact that notices on the comprehensive adjudication had started to go out in, I think it was the week of December 13th, and apparently we're still going out at that time. And as far as public outreach, one thing to mention, upcoming event, the annual Home and Leisure Show is going to be at the fairgrounds on March 19th and 20th. And we will, as we have in the past, last year we obviously didn't do it because of COVID, but this year the Home and Leisure Show is being scheduled, and we're going to have a booth there. So Lauren's making arrangements to get all those freebies to hand out in the literature, and we'll be there and answer questions and distribute a bunch of water-saving devices. Moving on, if it's your desire, January 19, 2020 special board workshop. I do have a few updates on a couple of those items. Nothing to report on the first one, which is revisiting the overdraft at this time. As far as the second bullet, the purchase and integration of seismic data into the hydrological, geological model. These were 2 tasks that were authorized by the board at the January 10th meeting with a budgetary figure of $200,000. John Jensen, who's with Collier Geophysics, and Tim Parker have reviewed and selected 59 of the 88 miles of seismic data to acquire for the El Paso area. SEI, which is the seismic line wholesaler, will be sending an invoice and a data licensing agreement to the district, hopefully next week. The cost to acquire the data is somewhere around $100,000. John will also provide a work order and the cost of reprocessing and interpreting that data. And that's where we're at with that item. Next one, communicating adjudication status and updates to the public. As I mentioned, we did have that special board meeting on January 26th. which had much better public participation on the December 14th meeting. Just being in the room and estimating, by sight, I would guess maybe about 100 people in the city council chambers. And I believe I was told somewhere between 60 and 70 people online, so much better participation. Also, with regard to communicating the adjudication status, we are frequently updating the frequently asked questions page on our website with information as it becomes available, working with Jim, with Doug Everts and his firm, with Providence Strategic Consulting. And so, again, as things change and there's more information, we are updating that page, and we are referring people to that page for information. Recycled water, I think.
Real quick, we continue to review and comment on the various phases that are coming out of the tasks, out of that alternatives analysis. We're trying to work, we are communicating with the Groundwater Authority and have expressed the district's desire to have Krieger and Stewart become more involved with the various tasks that are moving forward. Krieger and Stewart has a unique knowledge of this space, and you know, two heads are always better than one. We're hoping to get Krieger and Stewart more actively involved very shortly in that regard, and that's really all I've got on recycled water, Don. Continuing to move forward.
Okay, moving on, the next item on that list is the accuracy of the recharge numbers, and I have no update on that particular item at this time. Finally, the storage study, which is ongoing. Ramble has gone as far as possible in revising the Geocene 3D model hydrogeological zone boundaries using the seismic line interpretation that Collier provided for the China Lake Ridgecrest subarea of the valley. Maybe another month before they receive the seismic line interpretation from Collier for the El Paso area, so the hydrogeologic zones can be refined and then the study would then be completed. So we're probably a month to 2 months out of seeing that report.
Are you done with that part? I have a comment. I would like to go to the adjudication status and updates that you discussed. The hearing is supposed to be this next week, is that correct, Jim, or this week?
For the fee?
Yes, for the fee.
Friday,
I believe it's
Friday
Thursday.
18th.
Okay. I would like to first apologize to the public because I was at the admin exec meeting this week and I should have requested that this be on the agenda to discuss it because we did tell the public we were going to do that. So I apologize for not having that added. I would like to make a motion to have a special meeting Tuesday, the 22nd, so we can give an update to the public on the adjudication after we find out from what the court is. So if you guys are up for that, I would like to do that next Tuesday night because Monday is a holiday.
Well, before you go setting special board meetings, be aware that you don't always get a decision from the court on the day thereof, so.
Well, could we cancel it if it didn't? I just don't want it to keep going out to where we don't update and then we have to wait a full month to let the public know what's going on because I'm getting questions constantly. I mean, I have a thing full of Messenger. How do I fill this out? You know, do I have to pay the fee?
I don't disagree with the idea of a special board meeting, but I think we should wait until the
Time.
Thursday session is over and then make a call at that time, with the intention to have a meeting should something.
Well, we won't be able to have it next week is my concern. If it comes out Friday,
You only need 24 hours notice for a special board meeting. It's not 32 hours. So once we know, we can set something up. It's only 24.
And I would just suggest if the purpose of that meeting is just to provide information on a court decision, I don't know how many people would be watching, but we do have social media ways to get message out. Providence has been helping us with that. I think we've seen a big improvement on messages getting out. So we could certainly put that out there on our Facebook page, on our website, blast it. Our Twitter account is rejuvenated. So.
Well, the only reason to have a special meeting would be to make our esteemed attorney available to answer any questions the public might have regarding the ruling.
and I feel it's important for the papers and stuff to get it to where they could see that, you know, I want to make sure that everybody knows that we are being open. We got some accusations thrown at us as board members
But could you at least let us get the decision to see what it says so we can
Correct,
prepare
okay.
for whatever it is instead of just
Absolutely.
giving me a date and all of a sudden a surprise or we don't get anything. So we can set something up fairly quickly, but let's see what we're looking at first. That's all.
Okay, thank you for the suggestion.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else? Any comments or questions from the public at this point?
Aren't you supposed to be in bed by now, Ron?
Yeah, I should be. About the adjudication, the last meeting that you had, I thought it went real well. There were a lot of participation. You answered all the questions. The only thing I didn't appreciate was the accusations about the board. I thought that was ill-founded. It shouldn't have been said. Yeah, you know, what was being done by a lawyer, specifically that. I really, it actually embarrassed me to hear what was said about you guys. So, but otherwise, I thought the meeting went real well. The other question I have is on recycled water, and all these discussions about recycled water and whatever system goes in, who's going to operate it? I mean, obviously,
It's up for, you know, we don't know. It's up
yeah,
for-
I know
it's
you
up
don't
for
know, but I mean,
discussion.
there aren't many choices. It's either the GA, or it's the city, or it's the water district.
That's correct.
Okay, so those are the three choices. So GA may actually.
There may
become
be
an
a fourth that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, if it is, I don't know what it is. But I'm just saying that the chances are is it's going to be the water districts that's going to operate. And that would be my guess. So I think the idea of keeping Krieger and Stewart involved as much as possible has to be done. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All righty. Any other questions or comments? Don? Go ahead and help yourself.
No. Good night, guys.
Good night.
See you, Ron.
Don, please continue. Oh, well, 33
Well,
update,
33.
sorry.
Say, Ron, the best parts to come. All right, well, 33, the saga continues, right? Okay. Trying to remember what the last update was. Was the stuck camera, right? That was the last update, or they were trying to fish it out and.
18 inches of cable.
Okay, so yeah, okay. So, they went back in and that got turned off again. Okay, there we go. So they were able to fish out a whole bunch of the cables, kind of looked like a rat's nest of cable that they were able to get out of there. And they went all the way down the bottom of the well, and because we thought there was more cable down in there, and there was not. So we verified that with a video, and the video showed that there is a piece still sticking up out behind the liner, maybe 18 inches or so, or 2 feet. It's presumably attached still to the camera that's still stuck behind there. So what we're going to do is proceed with swedging off the top of that liner. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with what a swedge is. It's like a corrugated piece of metal, essentially, that they put down in there and they push it up against the sides and they seal it off. It's a proprietary service by a company called Longmire that does that work. And then they go down afterwards and they verify that it's placed properly. So once that's done, we're going to gently brush the well a bit because it is kind of nasty looking down there, and get some of the biggest crud out and bail out the bottom and put in the rebuilt pump and see what happens. That's what we're going to do. Because we could not do the sand invasion survey that we wanted to do. That's the whole original idea, was to try to figure out, you know, where the sand and the gravel's coming from. And at this point, we're kind of presuming it's coming from the top of that liner because obviously it's been breached, and there shouldn't have been a way to get that camera back behind that liner. That shouldn't have happened. So that's the plan right now, how we're going to proceed. Any questions?
Down as the camera.
The liner is at 535 feet. That's the top of the liner. So it's behind that. Yeah.
Any other questions on well 33? Lucky 33.
And I am negotiating with Best with 2 S's to see if we can split costs for some of this stuff. So.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
All right, very good.
Did you say, Renee, this is Mallory, did you say that the camera has been retrieved, or is it still there?
No, it's still there. No, we couldn't get it out.
Okay. But we got all the cable.
Got almost all the cable, yeah.
Okay.
All right, very good, thank you. Post-earthquake Cal OES reimbursement.
So on January 11th, I sent an email with the paperwork again to, I don't know what they call it, their payment office. So I resubmitted on January 11th. So at this point, probably give them another month before we inquire again, because I know it takes them several months to process those things. So.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All right, financial status.
Through January of 2022, we had actual revenues of 9.6 million, which was 439,000 more than budget. Our expenditures came in at 10,264,000, which is 33,000 below budget. So our net is a negative 655,000, but that is 472,000 better than budget anticipated at this time. Capital expenditures of 560,000. Of that, 176,000 is funded by the COP, and debt service principal of 648,000. Questions on that? I can go to the delinquent accounts, which in January increased from 323 to 347 accounts that would have been locked off in January had the moratorium not been in place, for a total of 376,000 past due. Now, we had 48s were issued last week for a shut-off date on last Thursday. We issued 103 48-hour notices. In those 2 days, we had about 50 that came in and paid. So we only had lock-offs of 56. We did also issue 48s for billing cycle 3, which was locked off today. We had 48 issued and only 34 that we had to actually lock off. So.
Okay.
So how many of the 50 from last week that are they still locked off?
We had many come in and pay. I'm not sure on that number. I don't have the number for turn-ons.
Okay.
But there was a lot of people in on Thursday
So
and
people
Friday.
are paying their bills because they're getting locked up.
Yes.
So I think, okay. That was my concern. I thought it would work that way.
Yeah. And then just so you know, there is a low-income household water assistance program webinar that I will be listening to tomorrow and see what that program's all about. It's some state program. We'll see if it's something we can do here or not. But
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All right. Solar production.
for solar, actual savings in January was 32,162, which was less than the guarantee of 35,792. Looking at the January numbers, it looks like well 31 was coming in quite a bit lower than it should have. We don't have a report on why that was yet. Also, we haven't received numbers for well 35. So we're working with NG to try to get that information and those numbers. Actual savings for this fiscal year is up to 262,354.
All right, any questions on solar production?
How long in the rears will they go without, coming up and straightening up with us?
Usually they're up within the month. Is that what you're talking about with when
Now,
we have
when will
problems?
they be forced to even up
Oh,
with us?
I believe it's a 7-year guaranteed, and we're 4 years into that, 4 or 5.
So at the end of 7 years,
Then we see what's left in the savings.
we'll see a lot of activity going on year 6 as they try to boost
That's
production.
possible. Right now, they're sitting on about a $300,000 credit.
Okay,
So
I like that.
all right, thank you. Conservation, please.
For calendar year 2022, so 1 month, we had 5 water waste reports received, 5 contacts made, 0 formal warnings, and 0 penalties issued.
Nice. All right. Very good. SCADA system.
I'll start with the bad news first. We had hoped to have screenshots and a demonstration of the system working and for final acceptance of the project at this board meeting. We were not able to accomplish that. The CEO and senior programmer for ATSI did pass away 2 weeks ago. They are working at getting a new CEO. They hope to have the contract done this week. And it is somebody who the district has worked with a lot in the past and who knows our system extremely well. The ATSI sent us their last revision of the SATs and PCNs on Thursday, which the staff is reviewing. And that's where we are.
Could you please pass the condolences of the board of directors to them?
I will.
All right. Any questions on the system? All right. Arsenic treatment facilities update.
We had hoped to have the quote for the under drain system by this board meeting. Unfortunately, they were not able to get the prices, but I did receive them today. So we will have that for the board's approval at the next board meeting. And with the volatility of the steel market, they're only able to hold those prices for 30 days. So if we don't approve at the next board meeting, they probably won't stay at that price.
Okay. All right. So if everything falls into place, they're on track to do the necessary work before.
If everything falls into place, everything gets approved, we'll have the under drains built and on site, and then next fiscal year, we will install them.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Do you think that, as far as pricing going up, I understand what steel's doing right now. Do you think that you could put a report together or something, we could pass it around and get it coming before we're losing money for another month?
Yeah, the idea, we'll have it ready to go for the next board meeting.
I mean, do we need to do something sooner? I mean, or not?
I will definitely have something in Don's hands tomorrow,
Okay.
exactly what the cost is.
Okay. Thank you. Operations.
For the month of January, we replaced 7 laterals and installed 19 new ones. 31 valves were exercised. The NODES ran 11 times, saving 47,460 gallons, bringing our grand total since its first run to 8,377,775 gallons.
All right. Any questions? All right. Thank you. That brings us to item 9, board comments and future agenda items. Let's start with Vice President Boyd.
I don't have anything that's pressing at the moment. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else?
Well, I'm still very adamant about getting some kind of information out of the GA, and I'm going to continue to speak up about it.
Okay. Understood.
Thank you.
As I mentioned previously, I think we should consider actively pursuing a grant for pumping optimization. I think if it's going to happen, it may have to come from this group. And I don't see that being a conflict with the GA, since they're not really pushing it at this point in time. And I think every cent they get from every grant they get is going to want to put it on imported water. So my feeling is we need to at least consider that. I'm not saying we should do it, but I want to make sure that whatever we do is a decision, not just a fall through the cracks. The second thing is we should one more time decide whether we want to ask for a waiver for the man camp water. It wasn't us that wanted to have a policy on emergency water or waive of the water. It was the GA staff that has postponed this thing for what seems like forever, but I think it's probably only been a year. But we spent a lot of money on it and it went nowhere. It never got PAC support, and we need to, again, just don't want to let it slip through the cracks. We need to decide, do we want to pursue a waiver or not? We may not, may not be worth it, I guess, I don't know. But again, I would like to have a positive up-down decision. And the last thing is, my feeling is once we get an input from both Tim Parker and Chuck Krieger on the draft 2021 annual report, we may want to consider having a consensus letter written to the GA dealing with our concerns, depending upon what, of course, the outcome of their input is. My feeling is we're the only ones with any skin in the game. I don't see any of the other 4 people on the GA board raising a big stink about not having a complete report. It's our people that are paying the money, and so I have a feeling is we need to look at it very seriously. And obviously, we want to talk with Tim and Chuck before we do anything, but I think, and the 25th, we can't do anything before the 25th, but the board doesn't review it until the following March review, that is meeting, and it doesn't have to be submitted until April 1. So there is a little bit of time for us to get Tim and Chuck's input and something on paper and sent to the GA.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Director Griffin.
Yes, first I'd like to thank the staff for coming tonight, and my apologies to your spouses and significant others for interrupting your Valentine's Day tonight. If it would have been my choice, we would not have had a meeting tonight. But thank you for attending, and again, our apologies. Second of all, the community lost a great man last week, a former city council member, a great friend. So I think our condolences should go out to the Patton family.
Jason Patton
will
passed
be
away,
greatly
yes.
missed, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
They're having the viewing Thursday.
Thursday,
And the funeral.
Friday.
Very good. Well, I'd like to thank our general manager, our staff, and our consultants for their clear and concise reports. I very much appreciate that. Here on the supposedly most romantic day of the year, although if you're doing it right, every day is Valentine's Day. And I'd like to thank the public, both in person and remotely, for joining us here tonight. And I will call the open session closed at 7:47 p.m. All right, how much? All right. Open session is called back into order at 9:42 PM. Jim?
Board met with staff and legal counsel on the items under closed session. No action was taken that requires disclosure under the Brown Act.
All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned, 9:42 PM.
Thank you.
I know.